I never imagined I could feel this restless inside my own home. The morning sunlight spilled across the bedroom floor, soft and golden, yet it could not warm the fire already kindling beneath my skin. Stephen was making coffee in the kitchen, his movements easy and familiar, the kind that usually made me sigh in comfort. But today, my pulse hummed with something else, something unclaimed. I wanted to surprise him tonight. I wanted to see him unravel. The thought alone made my lips curl. I could almost feel the brush of his fingers, the gentle pull of his hands as he noticed me in ways only he could. But my mind refused to stop there. I had imagined a daring thrill, a secret that would send shivers down his spine, one that I had only hinted at with a teasing smile yesterday. "I will shock you tonight," I had said, letting the words roll off my tongue, tasting the sweetness of mischief. I didn't realize the challenge I had set until he raised an eyebrow, that slow, knowing look that made my knees ache before our eyes had even met. I sipped my coffee, tasting the warmth against my tongue, letting the aroma curl around my senses. Cinnamon and nutmeg, his favorite blend, filled the air like an invisible caress. I could hear the faint hiss of the machine and the soft clink of the mug against the counter. It was mundane, comforting, yet it only heightened my anticipation. Every ordinary sound seemed to pulse with possibility, as though the house itself waited with me for what the night might bring. Stephen turned, catching me watching him. His eyes, steady and bright, scanned me as though he could see the secrets I had not spoken. There was a flicker there, a playful glint, and I felt my pulse stir again. "You sound confident," he said, a teasing smile brushing his lips. "But I wonder, do you mean to include someone else?" My chest tightened. The words were not what I expected, yet curiosity shone in them, inviting. My own breath caught as I realized the thought had never crossed my mind before he even spoke it aloud. My mind raced. Would I dare to include Caroline, my friend, my sister in everything but blood, the one who laughed freely and carried herself with an untouchable confidence that made me ache with admiration? The idea should have been absurd, impossible, but part of me quivered at the thought. I set down my mug, letting the rich scent of coffee mingle with the faint trace of jasmine from the candle I had lit for him this morning. The flame flickered softly in the early sunlight, casting shadows that seemed to play over my skin. "Maybe," I said, my voice lower than I intended, as if speaking it aloud could make it real. "Caroline." I swallowed, heart skimming the edge of something dangerous, something thrilling. The call had to be made. My fingers hovered over the phone, hesitant, imagining how I could even explain this without sounding reckless. Come help me make him happy. Join me as I drive him crazy. The thoughts tumbled like silk slipping through my fingers. But before I could second-guess myself, my phone rang. It was her. "Am I invited?" Caroline's voice was all laughter and warmth, unrestrained, unhesitating. "Yes," I said immediately, the word tasting like sugar on my tongue. "Absolutely." And just like that, my pulse raced in a way it never had before. The morning stretched on, though time itself seemed to hum differently now. I moved through the house with careful purpose, brushing my fingers over the smooth counter, letting the coolness of the marble remind me that tonight, everything could be electric. The soft fabric of my dress slid over my skin, brushing against my arms, reminding me of my own sensuality before the night had even begun. I caught my reflection in the mirror and froze. There was something in my eyes I had never seen before. A spark of daring, a glimmer of desire. By midday, the plan felt simultaneously audacious and inevitable. I thought of Stephen, how he would look at me when the evening arrived, the tilt of his head, the slow recognition in his eyes that something remarkable was about to unfold. The thought alone sent a shiver curling down my spine, and I realized that anticipation itself could be intoxicating. I imagined him catching the first subtle glance from Caroline across the room, the smallest touch of her hand against mine that would set a pulse racing. I packed our overnight bag with deliberate care, each item a promise, each touch a secret thrill. Soft silk, my favorite perfume, the kind of scent that clung to skin and memory alike. The city outside shimmered through the windows, distant and golden, but my attention was entirely on what awaited in the suite downtown. I could hear the hum of traffic, the distant sirens, a rhythm that matched the quickened beat of my pulse. When we finally arrived, the suite greeted us like a stage set for indulgence. Warm light glowed from sconces, casting soft shadows on the plush carpet. The scent of roses mingled with vanilla, a heady combination that made my breath catch. I stepped forward, heels clicking against the polished floor, and for a moment, I imagined Stephen turning to me with eyes full of desire I had only ever glimpsed. Caroline arrived moments later, a radiant presence that seemed to command the room without a word. Her laughter was soft but teasing, filling the space like a caress. My pulse danced as I felt the subtle interplay between her confidence and my own careful planning. She approached me, touching my arm lightly, a spark that made goosebumps rise along my skin. "Ready to make him remember tonight?" she asked, her voice a gentle promise. "Yes," I said, though my voice was quieter than I meant. My heartbeat was a drum I could feel in my throat, more than ever. We moved through the suite like a silent choreography. Every gesture was deliberate. Every glance had weight. Caroline poured wine, and I watched Stephen's fingers brush against mine as he accepted a glass. The warmth of his hand against mine electric. The wine smelled of cherries and honey, sweet and heady. And I traced the rim of my glass with a fingertip, imagining the thrill of anticipation that could only grow. The night was still young, but the air already seemed charged. I felt the heat of Stephen's gaze when he didn't think I was watching, and Caroline's presence made every brush of skin and glance feel like a promise. It was teasing, playful, a dance of attention and longing that made me ache with the need to see what would unfold. I caught myself imagining the moments to come, the subtle pressure of fingers tracing lines that had never been traced before, the sighs and quiet gasps that spoke more than words could, the thrill of orchestrating desire that was ours and ours alone. Yet beneath that excitement, a question pricked at me. Could the spark between Stephen and Caroline grow too bright? Could temptation overshadow trust? I pushed the thought aside. Tonight, we were alive with possibility. Tonight, I would watch his reactions, feel the subtle shifts in tension, and surrender to a world I had only dared to imagine. And then it happened. A single look, shared between Stephen and Caroline, one charged with curiosity and a hint of something unspoken. I felt it deep in my chest, a shiver that made me aware of every inch of my skin, every beat of my pulse. My breath caught, shallow and sharp, as a thrill of recognition passed between them. Desire was no longer a quiet flame. It was rising, daring me to step closer, to step further. I realized with the mix of exhilaration and trepidation that tonight would change everything. I had invited curiosity, I had invited temptation, and I could already sense that surrender was near. The room seemed to breathe with us, the soft glow of the lights, the warm scent of wine and roses, the gentle hum of distant city traffic, all conspiring to pull us into a night that would linger in memory, even before the first touch was claimed. And then Stephen's hand found mine, holding it gently, yet firmly, a quiet question in his touch. Caroline's gaze met mine, an unspoken promise of mischief, and I knew, with a thrill that made me tremble, that nothing would be the same after tonight. This was only the beginning. We sat together, glasses of wine in hand, laughter spilling easily. Yet my pulse refused to settle. The warmth of anticipation hummed beneath my skin, a gentle reminder of what was coming. And then Caroline leaned closer, her lips brushing just above my ear, her voice a playful tremor. "Are you sure you're ready for what he'll really want tonight?" I shivered, knowing I might already be in too deep. I felt the heat of Stephen's hand in mine as we stepped into the suite, and my pulse quivered at the thought of what Caroline's presence would bring. The glow of the sconces bounced off polished surfaces, soft and golden, casting shadows across our skin. Even before our eyes met each other again, I could feel anticipation curling in my chest, a low, thrilling hum that threaded through every fiber of me. The night had begun, but the real danger, the temptation, was only now making its entrance. Caroline arrived moments later, and the air seemed to vibrate with her energy. She moved with a natural grace, her laughter spilling across the room like a ripple of silk. My pulse quickened as I felt the accidental brush of her hands on my arm, a touch light but electric. I told myself it was nothing, yet I felt a heat rise along my skin, spreading slowly, deliberately. Her presence was magnetic, dangerous, familiar, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Stephen's gaze followed her, and for a moment, a strange tug of jealousy pricked at me. I hated that I noticed it, hated that the thrill of anticipation had a shadow beneath it. He smiled at her, and she returned it with a teasing tilt of her head. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to remind myself that I had orchestrated this, that I was in control. But control felt fragile tonight, like delicate crystal, ready to fracture under the weight of desire. The room smelled of roses and vanilla, the soft glow of candles casting delicate warmth over our skin. I felt the cool edge of the marble countertop under my fingers as I poured wine for us, the glass slippery and smooth in my hand. Stephen accepted it, his fingers brushing mine, and I shivered at the contact, tasting the warmth that lingered long after he let go. Caroline leaned close, laughing softly, and I caught the faint scent of her perfume, jasmine mingling with a subtle musk that made my pulse spike. "Ready to make him remember tonight?" she murmured, leaning just enough that our shoulders touched. The brush of her warmth against me made my breath catch. I nodded, though I felt my stomach tighten with the thrill of what we were about to do. Every glance, every smile, every soft touch was a promise, a spark that set fire to nerves I had never realized could feel so alive. We settled on the sofa, glasses in hand, and I watched them. Stephen's eyes found mine often, but Caroline's presence drew him in ways that made my pulse race. He laughed at something she said, the low timbre rolling through me like honey, and I had to force myself to drink from my glass so I wouldn't betray my eagerness. The warmth of the wine against my lips was grounding, yet the thrill of temptation hummed beneath it. Every glance, every subtle movement was layered with possibility. Caroline brushed past me, ostensibly to pour herself another glass, and her fingers traced mine lightly in passing. I swallowed hard, trying to mask the quickening of my pulse. Her nearness was intoxicating, her confidence a tantalizing weapon I couldn't resist. I caught myself imagining what it would feel like if she leaned closer, if her hands mapped the curves of my shoulders, if she found her way into the private corners of our night. My pulse hummed insistently, a drum that demanded attention. Stephen's hand found mine again, lingering this time, pressing softly as if asking a question without words. My body responded before my mind could catch up, warmth pulling low, awareness sharpening to every nuance of touch. I leaned toward him, letting my shoulder brush his, feeling the strength in his arm, the quiet reassurance in his presence. Caroline's laughter floated near, soft and deliberate, and I realized with a shock that I wanted her to see me with him, to be part of this web we were weaving together. The room seemed smaller, warmer, every sound amplified. The gentle clink of glass against glass, the whisper of silk against skin, the subtle brush of a hand against my forearm. All of it set my nerves alight. My chest felt tight with anticipation, yet I relished it, each pulse a reminder that tonight would be different, extraordinary. Stephen leaned closer, his lips brushing against my ear, and I felt the heat in my skin spike again. The sound of his voice was a caress, low and soft, stirring a thrill I could not ignore. I felt Caroline shift beside me, the warmth of her body a tantalizing counterpoint, and I knew we were all caught in the tension of the night. Desire was no longer a secret. It was a current pulling us forward, daring us to cross lines we had only imagined before. Our flirtation became a subtle dance. Stephen's hand rested lightly on my knee, my fingers brushing the edge of his palm as we moved. Caroline's presence was a teasing challenge, her proximity creating sparks at every accidental brush of skin. My pulse raced at each glance, at each fleeting contact, and the warmth in my chest grew steadily, undeniable. The room seemed to lean with us, the soft light, the scent of roses, the faint warmth of the city beyond the windows, all conspiring to heighten every sensation. I could see it in Stephen's eyes, the way his gaze lingered on Caroline for just a heartbeat longer than expected, and I felt a thrill of jealousy and exhilaration. I hated that I noticed it, but I couldn't deny it. My body hummed with anticipation, each nerve alive with the electricity of proximity and possibility. Then Caroline leaned closer, her voice soft but charged. "I think he's ready for more than just a toast," she said, her fingers brushing mine almost accidentally. I gasped softly at the touch, the warmth of her skin sending shivers down my arm. I caught Stephen's gaze on us both, and I felt the tension coil tight, like a bowstring ready to release. I felt him draw closer, his hand tracing a path up my arm, brushing over the warmth Caroline had left in its wake. My pulse hammered in response, a heady mix of jealousy, thrill, and surrender. Caroline's hand lingered near mine, a silent challenge, a spark of temptation that I could not resist. We were a trio, caught in the delicate balance of desire and restraint, each motion layered with meaning. And then it happened, a fleeting, euphemistic moment of surrender. Stephen's hands held mine gently, his lips brushing against my shoulder, and the world narrowed to the sound of our breathing. Caroline leaned slightly, her fingers grazing my waist, and I trembled as the warmth pulled deeper, low in my chest, high in my pulse. The sensation built steadily, an intricate play of touch, breath, and shared attention, until the release came like a shiver, leaving me unsteady, breathless, and trembling. The room itself seemed to exhale with us, the light soft, the scent of roses clinging to our skin, the hum of the city, a distant lullaby. When the shiver ebbed, I found myself leaning against Stephen, chest pressed to his, feeling the quiet warmth of his embrace. Caroline's hand brushed mine one last time, soft and deliberate, a reminder of the delicious danger still present. My pulse slowed only slightly, my breath catching in irregular rhythms, as I realized how intoxicating it had been, how close we were to lines I hadn't intended to cross so soon. Yet beneath the pleasure, a seed of doubt prickled. I noticed the intensity in Stephen's gaze when he looked at Caroline, a spark that lingered just long enough to unsettle me. I forced myself to inhale deeply, smelling the perfume and warmth and wine, letting it ground me. Tonight had been extraordinary, thrilling, but it had also shown me that temptation could be a living thing, curling between us with playful claws. We settled into a quieter rhythm, the soft clink of glasses, the hum of laughter, the gentle brush of fingers along the back of chairs. Yet I could not shake the awareness that the night was far from over, that the tension, the desire, the forbidden thrill was only growing. Caroline leaned close to my ear, soft breath brushing my cheek. "He's more responsive than I imagined," she said, playful, challenging. "Are you ready for what comes next?" My breath hitched, warmth pooling low again, and I knew I had already lost some control. Desire had become a current, one I could not resist, one that promised discovery, risk, and pleasure in equal measure. I glanced at Stephen, whose eyes held both reverence and curiosity, and realized that we were on the cusp of crossing a threshold none of us could anticipate. Then, just as a sense of dangerous anticipation settled fully, I caught a look between Stephen and Caroline, fleeting but charged, and a jolt of unease shivered down my spine. What had I invited into this night? The thrill and the dread collided in my chest, leaving me breathless and questioning everything I thought I knew about desire, trust, and temptation. And before I could even gather my courage, the suite door opened quietly, a shadow falling across the warm glow of the room, and I realized with a gasp that the night might not remain ours alone. My body hummed with warmth, pulse erratic, yet I held onto Stephen's hand, grounding myself. Laughter and the scent of roses filled the quiet, but beneath it, a tension hummed that neither wine nor touch could erase. A sudden noise at the door drew our attention. Someone outside, unexpected, a presence that might unravel everything we had built tonight. My breath caught. The thrill of temptation had just become a test of loyalty. If you're still here, then you are truly part of the heartbeat of this channel. I appreciate you more than I can say. The best way you can help us keep telling these stories is by sharing them on Facebook with your groups, in your communities, and on WhatsApp with friends and family. Think of it as passing on a gift, a story that might comfort someone, inspire someone, or simply brighten their day. Your shares are powerful, and with them, you help us grow this family into something even more beautiful. Thank you for being here, and thank you for believing in what we're building together. Back to our story. The door had barely closed behind the shadow, but my pulse refused to settle. My hand was still in Stephen's, warm and grounding, yet something in the subtle shift of energy in the room made every nerve awake. Caroline's eyes sparkled with mischief, but there was a flicker of calculation too, and I felt a curious tension curl in my chest. Every glance now carried weight. Every touch had consequence. The night we had been building toward wasn't just teasing anymore. It was urgent, impossible to ignore. Stephen moved closer, his hand brushing my back as if to reassure, but his gaze darted briefly toward Caroline, sharp, questioning. The soft hum of the city beyond the windows was punctuated by our own shallow breaths, each one louder in the quiet of the suite. I felt heat gather low in my chest, mingling with that tension, coiling tight and demanding attention. My lips parted slightly, tasting the faint trace of wine on my own breath, and I realized I was trembling. Not from fear, but from the electricity of proximity and unspoken possibility. Caroline leaned toward me, so close that her shoulder brushed mine. I inhaled the faint scent of her perfume, jasmine and warmth mingling with vanilla and rose, and a shiver darted down my spine. My fingers twitched, brushing the edge of her arm almost accidentally, yet the sensation ignited a spark that I couldn't contain. I felt guilty immediately, loyalty and desire colliding, but there was no denying the thrill, no denying that she stirred something forbidden inside me. Stephen's hand slid lower along my arm, gentle, deliberate, and I felt the warmth of his skin seep into mine. Every nerve ended at the point of contact, every glance from him sending a surge of electricity through my veins. My chest pressed closer to him, our shoulders brushing, and I could feel the heat radiating between us. Caroline's presence made the sensation sharper, as though the room itself pulsed with the tension between three bodies, three hearts, three layers of desire and uncertainty. I glanced at Caroline, and her gaze held mine, teasing, daring. "You're more responsive than I expected," she said, voice soft but pointed, a tremor of playfulness threading through it. I shivered as the words brushed against my ear, lingering in a way that made my breath catch. My pulse hammered at the touch of her gaze, her words, her nearness. I had invited her here, but now that she was fully present, fully tangible, I realized just how dangerously alive the night could become. Stephen leaned in, and the warmth of his lips against my shoulder drew a gasp from me. The sensation spread through me like molten silk, pooling deep and insistent. Caroline's hand brushed mine as she reached for her glass, just enough to make the contact intimate without revealing intention. My pulse stuttered, desire tangled with guilt, and my breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. Every nerve in my body was ignited, trembling with anticipation, every inch of my skin alive to the slightest movement. We sank onto the sofa, and I felt the fabric under me, soft and yielding, catching the warmth of our bodies. Stephen pressed close, and the subtle brush of our thighs against each other made my stomach coil in anticipation. Caroline's laughter echoed softly, teasing, and I noticed the way she traced a finger along her glass, deliberately slow, deliberately provocative. I was aware of every sound, the clink of glass, the soft sigh of my own breath, the faint scrape of nails against smooth fabric. The room seemed alive with possibility, every motion fraught with tension. And then the first moment of surrender arrived. Not loud, not sudden, but exquisite in its subtlety. Stephen's hands held mine, and his lips brushed against my neck, soft and deliberate. The warmth pooled low in my chest, coiling tight, and my breath hitched, shallow, rapid. Caroline's hand lingered near mine, a subtle spark that reminded me of the dangerous thrill we had summoned. My pulse trembled as sensation wove through me like a delicate, burning thread. Every nerve was awake, every sense amplified. The warmth of skin against skin, the scent of perfume and candle wax, the soft hum of our breaths mingling in the quiet suite. I felt myself giving in, letting the tension roll through me until it peaked, a euphemistic release that left me unsteady, breathless, trembling in Stephen's arms. My lips parted in a soft sigh, eyes fluttering closed, and the room seemed to exhale with me. Caroline's hand lingered near mine, a subtle spark that reminded me of the dangerous thrill still present, the temptation that hadn't been named. My pulse began to slow, though the heat remained, deep, lingering, impossible to ignore.
When I opened my eyes, Stephen's gaze held mine, intense, full of a quiet reverence and an unspoken question. Caroline watched from beside us, her own pulse apparent in the slight rise and fall of her chest, her lips curved in a teasing, knowing smile. I felt a shiver at the glance they exchanged, one fleeting, charged, and impossible to ignore. I hated the jealousy that flickered through me, hated the thrill of it, but I couldn't deny that it made the night even more intoxicating. We settled into a quieter rhythm, bodies close, hands brushing, glances stealing, words soft and deliberate. I felt Caroline's presence as both temptation and reassurance, a paradox that made my pulse quicken. I noticed the way Stephen's hand lingered just slightly longer on mine, the warmth of his lips grazing my shoulder once more, the faint scent of his cologne mingling with wine and roses, and I realized I was caught in a delicate balance of trust and desire. The second wave of euphemistic surrender came with Caroline's playful daring. Her hand brushed along my arm as she reached for a glass, deliberately, and the sensation made me shiver. I pressed closer to Stephen, letting his strength ground me, yet the thrill of her proximity, the forbidden pull of attraction, coiled tighter in my chest. My pulse raced, breath shallow, and I felt my body respond in ways I hadn't anticipated, caught between loyalty and temptation, between pleasure and a dangerous curiosity. The three of us became a rhythm of breath, warmth, and subtle intimacy. Fingers brushed, lips pressed briefly against cheeks and necks, glances stolen and returned with intent. Each moment was charged, yet the euphemistic veil kept it safe for now. The thrill was in the anticipation, in the delicate balance of trust and desire, in the danger of the forbidden. Every brush of skin, every sigh, every shiver of awareness was amplified by the knowledge that boundaries were being tested and perhaps broken. I felt Caroline lean closer to me once more, her lips brushing my temple ever so slightly, a gesture that made my pulse spike. My body responded instantly, low and insistent, and I realized with both excitement and alarm that the temptation was becoming impossible to resist. Stephen's hand remained warm on mine, grounding me, yet I could feel the currents of attraction swirling around us, undeniable, urgent, and dangerously electric. And then, just as I felt the next wave of surrender building, a sound at the door cut through the tension, a soft tap, deliberate, familiar. My breath caught, pulse jumping. Someone was outside, someone unanticipated, and I realized that our carefully orchestrated night, our delicate dance of desire, might not remain ours alone. Caroline's hand brushed mine in a fleeting, electric touch, and I caught the way Stephen's gaze darted toward the door, his expression caught between anticipation and alarm. The tension in the room coiled tighter, every nerve alive, every breath shallow. The temptation, the desire, the forbidden thrill, all suspended, waiting for the next move. I felt my body shiver with both excitement and dread, the warmth still pooling low in my chest, the scent of wine and roses mixing with the faint edge of something unknown, a presence yet unseen. I knew, with a mixture of thrill and fear, that the next moments would define everything: trust, loyalty, and the depth of passion we had begun to explore. And then a voice, soft, almost casual, but unmistakable, carrying the weight of discovery, drifted through the doorframe. "I didn't think you'd be this close." The words cut through me suddenly and intimately, and I realized, with a gasp, that someone was watching, someone had arrived, someone who could unravel everything. I clung to Stephen's hand, trying to ground myself, yet the warmth of my pulse and the shiver of desire from Caroline's touch remained, a delicate tension threading through every nerve. The door opened fully, and a figure stepped into the soft glow of the suite. My breath hitched, pulse hammering. Everything we had built, every secret, every thrill, now teetered on the edge of exposure, and the night's most dangerous temptation was about to reveal itself. The figure at the doorway froze, half in shadow, half in the golden glow of the suite. My pulse leapt, the warmth in my chest tightening, a delicate coil of fear and desire. Stephen's hand remained in mine, grounding me, yet I could feel the electricity of the moment humming through every nerve. Caroline's gaze flicked between me and the newcomer, her lips curved in a smile that was part mischief, part challenge. I inhaled, tasting the subtle mix of rose petals and wine in the air, letting it steady my breath. Every sound, the soft scrape of fabric as we shifted, the faint hum of the city, the low thrum of our own pulse, amplified the tension. The night had become a delicate balance of pleasure and risk, and I realized, with a thrill that was impossible to ignore, that nothing would be simple tonight.
Stephen moved closer, pressing gently against my side. His presence was grounding, yet the desire radiating between him, Caroline, and me made every touch electric. Caroline leaned in, brushing her hand softly along my arm, a spark of temptation that sent shivers down my spine. My body responded instinctively, warmth pooling low, chest rising and falling with uneven breath, trembling at the subtle, shared intimacy. The newcomers stepped fully into the light, and my breath hitched. Their presence wasn't threatening, but it made the air feel taut, charged with possibility. I realized that every glance, every touch, every soft breath we had shared was now amplified by observation. My pulse hammered as I felt Stephen's hand tighten lightly around mine, anchoring me even as desire and curiosity coiled tighter in my chest. We moved as one, a rhythm built over hours of anticipation and delicate seduction. Stephen's hands pressed gently against my back, and Caroline's warmth pressed near mine, a tantalizing counterpoint. Every sensation, the smooth fabric of the sofa beneath me, the subtle pressure of fingertips tracing paths I hadn't dared explore, the scent of wine and perfume mingling with candle wax, drew me into a heightened state of awareness. My breath came in shallow, quick bursts, each one mingling with the soft laughter, murmurs, and subtle shifts of bodies around me. The first moment of euphemistic surrender came with deliberate subtlety. Stephen's lips brushed my neck, low and intimate, sending a shiver along my spine. Caroline's hand grazed mine, deliberate, teasing, a reminder of the forbidden attraction we had toyed with all night. I trembled, letting the sensation wash through me, chest tight with pleasure, pulse racing, until it culminated in a euphemistic release that left me unsteady. My lips parted in a soft sigh, eyes fluttering shut, every nerve alive, every sense heightened, every touch amplified. When I opened my eyes, Caroline's gaze met mine, warm and electric, a silent acknowledgement of the thrill we had shared. Stephen's presence at my side grounded me, yet the tension of temptation still coiled in my chest. Every glance between them carried layers of desire and curiosity. And I realized that tonight had become more than a celebration. It had become a revelation of what we could feel, together, and dangerously close to a line I hadn't anticipated crossing. We sank into the quiet rhythm that followed, the soft scrape of clothing against skin, the gentle rise and fall of breath, and the warmth of bodies pressed close, and the lingering scent of roses and wine. My pulse slowed just slightly, though the warmth within remained, a reminder that desire was still alive, coiling beneath the surface. Caroline's hand brushed against mine one last time, fleeting yet deliberate, and I felt a thrill of shared complicity, a bond born from daring and curiosity. Stephen's gaze met mine, steady, reverent, filled with unspoken words that made my pulse race anew. I realized that our intimacy had deepened, not just physically, but emotionally. Trust, desire, and connection intertwined in ways that were unexpected and intoxicating. Caroline's presence had been a catalyst, a spark that illuminated the intensity of what I could feel, yet also a reminder of the fragile balance between loyalty and temptation. The room seemed to exhale with us, the soft glow of candlelight reflecting in our eyes, the hum of the city distant, yet present. I rested my head against Stephen's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his pulse beneath my cheek, letting the warmth of shared intimacy soothe the thrill still alive in my chest. Caroline's laughter, low and playful, echoed softly, a gentle reminder that this night had been more than passion. It had been discovery, exploration, and a delicate dance of desire. And then, just as I let myself settle into the warmth of the moment, a phrase drifted from the doorway, soft but deliberate, carrying a weight that made my pulse catch. Caroline had leaned closer, a secret murmured just beyond my comprehension, yet impossible to ignore. She said, "I think he wants more than you realize." Her tone both playful and knowing, a spark of revelation hidden in casual delivery. I froze, pulse racing, warmth pooling again in an unexpected place. Stephen's hand squeezed mine gently, and I looked at him, eyes wide, searching, questioning. The implication of her words, the weight of what might come, sent a shiver darting through me. Desire, loyalty, temptation, all tangled in a delicate knot I didn't yet know how to untangle. The moment stretched, though I barely breathed. Caroline's gaze held mine, teasing, challenging, full of promise and danger. I felt my chest tighten, my knees weak, every nerve alive. The night had revealed pleasures I hadn't dared to imagine, desires I hadn't dared to explore, and now, with her words hanging in the air, I realized that there was still more to uncover. Something deeper, more thrilling, and potentially dangerous awaited. Stephen leaned closer, brushing a soft kiss against my temple, grounding me, yet amplifying the thrill. Caroline's presence pressed near, warmth and subtle scent reminding me that temptation was alive and that boundaries could be tested in ways I hadn't yet dared to contemplate. My pulse raced, my breath uneven, and I felt an intoxicating mixture of guilt, thrill, and anticipation coiling in my chest. I realized, in that suspended moment, that the night had changed us. Desire had expanded beyond what I had imagined. Trust had been tested in subtle, exhilarating ways, and the line between loyalty and temptation had become both sharper and more tantalizing. Every touch of skin, every shared glance, every soft sigh of breath had carried meaning. And then, as I settled back against Stephen, savoring the warmth of our closeness, the door opened once more. A shadow crossed the soft glow, a new presence, unexpected, deliberate. My breath caught, pulse leaping, the delicate balance of intimacy, trust, and temptation poised on the edge of revelation. I realized with a shiver that the night was far from over. The truth, the desires, and the secrets we had explored were about to collide with an unforeseen force, and the consequences of what we had dared were still unfolding. My body hummed with warmth and lingering pulse, a mixture of exhilaration and uncertainty threading through every nerve. The room smelled faintly of roses, wine, and candle wax, a reminder of the night's intimacy. Yet beneath it, a tension remained, a delicate question of trust, loyalty, and the hidden desires still waiting to be revealed. The newcomer stepped fully into the suite, and I realized with a gasp that their presence could undo everything. The thrills, the trust, the delicate balance of temptation. My pulse hammered, breath shallow, and the night's true test was only just beginning. I truly appreciate you for listening to this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. It makes a huge difference. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you'll never miss the next one. And I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Your words always inspire me to keep creating more for you. See you in the next story.